So, welcome back. We are going to be moving into Kronos versus Kalimdar. So, we're going to start off with taking a look at Kronos' list.
Yes, and
Which,
hello, I am back.
oh, yeah, Rhino's here too.
I
Sure.
exist. And just to let people know where we're at in this tournament, this is going to be round 4 of the losers bracket. So kind of round 5, right? You can't have round 1 of the losers bracket until round 1's already happened. So we're working our way through this tournament. There's still a lot of action to come, but we're trying to get as many matches featured as we go along. We're trying to get the rounds lined back up again so we're not missing out on too much fun stuff. People are just kind of playing as we go along, and we're trying to tag matches, but we've got this one tagged. It should be a fun one, and yeah, we're seeing Rakano again, and it's Rakano, isn't it?
It certainly is Rakano. But this is definitely a little bit of different of a take relative to the Earthly build. As I said, there is a pretty deep bench in this archetype of various strategies and ways to sort of tune the deck. We are seeing Pyro Knights here, which is something that not every list is playing right now. I am a big fan of the little Pyro lady who has done some very serious work in my stewardship with her.
Yeah, there's some things I like a lot about this deck. It's up to 27 power. Progress. Still 5/5 drops, but a bit more tolerable. No inspires at all. They're opting for Pyro Knights, kind of almost in that weird 1-drop spot. Like you basically are taking out inspires for Pyro Knights, and I like that. The 1-up Furnace Mage, ooh boy, that's gonna be incredible when it shows up.
I don't
Although not in this matchup.
Not well in this matchup. I think that Kalimdar is playing some number of Permafrost. We'll get to his list shortly. Yeah. But there's usually some targets in most matchups. Yeah. But definitely, I think that this is a fairly aggressive build of an aggressive deck. I mean, it kind of sounds redundant to say that, but it is something that it really is putting on the heat early, not playing something like Silverwing Familiars to give you that life gain.
Yeah, it's nice to see, even though there's only one of it, Shogun Scepter making a return to Rakano. I know it's mostly been relegated to Jito deck status, but I've always been pretty impressed with that card, especially when you're putting it on like a Champion of Glory and it actually becomes a hard to deal unit that also has Warcry. That's big. I love it.
So now let's take a look then at Kalimdar's list. Now this is one that is going to be a little bit less familiar to everybody because it is a little bit less common on the ladder, but it is something that I know that Kalimdar has been playing a lot of.
Yeah, we've got Feln Midrange. Not something I've dabbled with too much, but except when I play it all the time. But it's not Feln Control, it's not Feln Scream, it is right in the middle, right? We've got all sorts of super efficient, kind of hard to deal with threats, Midnight Gale being the premier card, although sadly dies to both Vanquish and Torch in this matchup. So you hope to, it's even though you can play Midnight Gale on 3, it's actually just so good because it's a really good top deck as a 3-drop. That's really where it shines. When you've kind of exhausted all resources, and yeah, you're just curving up with good stuff all the way. You see 4 Impending Dooms, that's another big flyer, a couple Stewards to hold down the ground, some removal spells and Death Strike, Feeding Time, Umbran Reapers. I mean, it's just good stuff the whole way, right?
Yeah, so I think that this matchup is going to sort of function around Kalimdar hoping to win victory through the skies, largely on the back of Gales and Pending Dooms and Champion of Cunning and Reapers, etc. While the Rakano deck is hoping to just go a little bit bigger, but is going to be stuck on the floor more as he has much fewer flyers.
Yeah.
So, but he is going to be able to beef up the units a significant amount using all that equipment. But Kalimdar hopefully is looking to pick up the correct mix of removal and threats to stay ahead.
Yeah, game 1, I think, honestly, the most important card for Kalimdar outside of like Suffocate is Argenport Instigator. Being able to just have that 3/3 that trumps their Crown Watch Paladin, Outlaw, Ronin, Pyro Knight right away without any need for anything else. Just that 1 to 2 turns it can buy you if they don't have the Torture Sword of Icaria can be huge in this matchup. Also, because Kronos is opting on to be on the Pyro Knight build, the Varus favor is more than just, I'll occasionally take out an Oni Ronin card. It can take out other real units too, and that's a big boon. Felm can handle decks that go a little bit wide. It's when they start to go real tall with units that can be awkward to deal with that it runs into problems.
Well, one of the things also is that Kronos is playing 4 finest hours. This is one of the things that is a big pull to this card, is that the amount of Argivore Instigators that started showing up on ladder when Burn was having its heyday, that your 1-drops and 2-drops can now attack past this 3/3, relatively freely. Now, sometimes you do just have to suicide in your Oni Ronins or whatever, just for the Roker triggers or to force through damage on other creatures, but it is something that at least you have a cheap tool for dealing with that beyond just the torch, which are heavily taxed anyway.
Yeah, just looking at the lists, I think Felm may be the underdog round one, as much as it pains me to say Felm is an underdog in any matchup, but it's something where it all comes down to the Rakano draw, right? We keep saying this. The Rakano, it's really up to Rakano to kind of beat itself if it's not drawing the right combination of threats and things. I mean, Felm's just a huge pile of redundant good units and good removal, right? Well, you can draw them in almost any combination. It'll work out okay.
Well, actually, I'm gonna. So it sounds like we're gonna be ready to go very shortly. We can probably jump into the game, but I'm gonna just, as we're transitioning in, I disagree slightly in the sense that I feel like the mix of removal that Kalimdar is able to pick up will make a relatively big difference depending on the exact threats that Kronos is presenting. So, for instance, if Kronos has the Outlaw and Kalimdar has the Annihilate, that's great. If Kronos has the Champion of Glory and Kalimdar has the Annihilate, then it's a lot different of a picture. So it is going to be. I have to agree with you that I think that this is, favors the Rakano deck slightly, but definitely if Kalimdar is able to put together a reasonable mix of removal, 1 or 2 potent threats, I think that he's going to be able to run Kronos out of the game pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, we can speculate all we want, but I think it's time to actually watch the action,
yes,
right?
It is.
The challenge is out. The play button is hit. You get to play some Eternal. Well, we don't get to play it. We get to watch people play it.
You get to watch people play Eternal, which I don't know if that's better or worse, but it's still great.
For our sake, I guess I hope it's better. Oh, boy. Okay.
So Kalimdar's hand I don't think is remotely keepable, but I think that Kronos is quite strong. That's a pretty good hand
play in this matchup. It makes Vera's favor that much better and mulligans into a beautiful hand of a bunch of cheap answers.
Yeah. Well, and this is one of the things I was mentioning about the way that threats line up with the answers that Kalimdar has. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
So the Kronos having the Outlaw, this can be very easily answered by anything in Kalimdar's hand. While the Champion of Glory on the other side is going to be a little bit harder to answer, but he is going to be able to use the permafrost on it.
Polymorph. Yeah, this is. Yeah. And Kronos' drawing power is both. He's in a spot where he needs power to play these 5-drops, but also needs like one more threat to bridge the gap. I mean, he doesn't know that yet. And boy, yeah, these permafrosts are not going to be great here, but ooh, man, this Midnight Gale certainly is.
Now, what do you do here in Kalimdar's spot? Do you develop a threat, or do you hit the polymorph?
Yeah, this is a hard decision. The Gale is so. My general rule is just against Rakano, just answer their threats. This pause here, though, is going to make Kalimdar terrified of playing this Midnight Gale, right? Although now Kronos is going to block and use Finest Hour. Whew. Yeah.
I think that you put them on
that's the Finest Hour at that point, right? Yeah, they didn't already torch this Argentport Instigator, so I don't know. It's hard to just put them on Finest Hour when your opponent knows you have Midnight Gales in your deck and they might not have any Vanquishes yet. That you might it might be logical to think, oh, they're just saving it for Midnight, right? I don't know.
Okay, so Kronos' side is going to be hammering up with this this frog.
That is the downside to Polymorph. It is not a permanent solution to Rakano.
Now I imagine that Kalimdar is going to counter this by playing a Permafrost on it now, but then Kronos might have the opportunity to counter the counter
with
by
plate.
playing the plate on the frog with the oh man.
Or just draw, God, hammer into Valkyrie and force it. Ooh, choosing to silence the Midnight Gale instead of the frog. Huh.
I guess he sees it as he's not going to have a chance to.
Oh, he has plate, so he already knows he's
exactly.
going to get rid of this stun. Yeah, but that means you have to draw the 5th power, but you'll draw the 5th power here now. So.
Yeah, I mean it's going to come sooner or later, right? Like it's going to Kalimdar doesn't have a way to really end the game too super quickly.
2-turn clock.
Yeah, this is Kalimdar now is really under the gun and has to find a flyer or a death strike or an
Polymorphs
annihilate
and
as well.
Permafrost not quite doing what they not quite doing enough of what they need to do here.
Well, this does allow him to block with the
sure.
Yeah.
It helps. It helps,
just,
right? It's not great. It's not Death Strike here.
Yeah,
you still have a 6/6 overwhelm to deal with, and Kronos doesn't quite have lethal here, but he has enough to put Kalimdar in an awkward spot. He's debating on whether he wants to vanquish, play a 2-drop, or just get the pressure with Soulfire Drake while your opponent has no cards in hand. And
so I kind of like the vanquish play because there's just very.
I favor Soulfire Drake.
Yeah, I think that's probably.
Because basically what you're going to do is you're swinging that vanquish target's still going to be there next turn, not doing it.
True.
And honestly, you might want to save the vanquish for if they draw another Midnight Gale next turn that actually flies and can block Soulfire Drake.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Isn't that more important than this Midnight Gale on the board? Isn't really that important. You're at 17. You don't care about this 4/3. But Kronos opts to go with that route instead. Takes your line.
Yeah, I think that you convinced me that the other one is probably better. Now, this is interesting. Okay, you set up one giant attack for next turn.
Yeah.
And you don't see the because I was considering attacking in with the frog just to push one damage. Get the
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean you're far ahead. You can go a bit more conservatively. It's just I am not the Rakano expert, so I could certainly have been wrong about things. I was just thinking it more from a I want to kill my opponent perspective, and we have and you have perfect information where you know they're top decking. So usually that's when you really want to put the pedal down. But okay, yeah.
But this is not going to do it.
Ooh, Death by Doom.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Well played indeed. Well played
yeah, so now we're gonna go to the boards and let's check out. I think let's see. If you're Kronos, you're basically gonna try and find ways to bring in Protect, right? That's what matters here the most. Even though Finest Hour is really good there, Protect is going to be almost better against all of this spot removal. They don't have any damage-based removal, right? No weapons that you have to worry about. Something like Lightning Storm, I don't think is going to come in, but could if you're really that concerned about the swarm of 2/2s. Your opponent is playing Pyro Knights.
Yeah, and I think that in a lot of the times, like for instance against Unearthly's build, I don't think I would bring in Lightning Storm, but here I would seriously consider bringing at least 1 or 2 in. It's certainly better than things like Champion of Cunning in your deck. Like there's a good number of cards that Kalimdar can cut that are just not good in this matchup.
Permafrost are coming out. The wisdoms you might not just have time to cast that many wisdoms, like the full 4. I don't know about the Lightning Storm. Sabos I like some number of, but I never know what the correct number is, right? Like you want to deal with these equipment, but it's not really like Rakano's playing that much equipment anymore, and the other top end is a huge unit. It does get a bit better with if you know your opponent's bringing in Protects, and they almost certainly are. Like at least forces them to use Protect. Or you can grab Protects while they're tapped out. So, I think some number of Sabos are coming in.
Well, yeah, I think that it's a really hard. It's much harder, I think, on Kalimdar's side. Like I think that it's Kronos. I would just not be doing too much. I would just a couple of cards here and there.
Mages, some Finest Hours, maybe some Pyro Knights, and bringing in some Protects. Silverwing Familiar is a contentious thing to think about here, right?
It is.
It's very hard for Felm to deal with, in that you have to ping it and use removal, but at the same time, it's very small. Your opponent has large flyers, so you're forced to make these familiars bigger. Like it doesn't line up that well against Impending Doom, for instance. So while you naturally might think Familiar is a good thing to bring in traditionally against Fel, not when they're running Impending Dooms, right?
Well, one of the things is that you could imagine they could be cutting the Impending Dooms because you have the Vanquishes, but at the same time, you could be cutting the Vanquishes, and which makes the Impending Dooms better. So it's definitely this is a hard one to decide for, I imagine, on both sides.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of cards that, depending on the way that your opponent's draw comes together, could either be devastating or just dead.
Yeah, let's see what happens here. And yeah, we see at least some number of Sabos came in. I don't think that's too surprising. Yeah, we've still got some Annihilates, some Suffocates. Lightning Storms did come in. Whether they brought in the full 4 or just 3, who knows? But some number came in. I imagine also the Cabal Countesses came out. Those
those are not great
in this matchup. That's not really what you want. It's more of an anti-control card. So Calendar had a lot of space to kind of shuffle around, hitting just the right removals. And we'll see what kind of threat suite Kronos has and if they all line up.
Yeah, Kalimdor definitely has a very reactive hand, and Kronos does not have a particularly threat-dense hand. So it just feels like this is going to be a game that's going to match up as being...
Which removal spell is correct to use here, and I think he wisely settles on Lightning Storm while your opponent's tapped out. Kronos, interestingly enough, did keep in Finest Hour.
Yeah, well, it is something that I kind of like it as a 1 or 2 of, because if you do end up getting involved in combat, it can be a really powerful tool. I definitely don't like the full 4, because you can get blown out by things like Annihilate, but I think you can pick your spots. But I definitely like Kalimdor's.
Yeah. Using Suffocate there, yes, Suffocate is your best answer to Champion of Glory, but here you get to use Wisdom of the Elders, so who cares?
Yep. And I think that you would imagine that if your opponent had the Champion of Glory, that they would have played it out previous turn.
Yeah.
Because it's just a better threat.
Ooh, now Calendar's got some real choices to make. Goes for the Suffocate line, which Kronos can block with Finest Hour. And he does realize this interaction. And I mean, you get a Finest Hour out of hand, which makes your Lightning Storm Vera's favor better, and you're forced to use a Annihilate here. The other interesting thing is actually that Kronos kept in Torch, which is normally bad against Felm, but actually good against Felm that plays Argenport Instigator and Midnight Gale. So Calendar's presenting all these different threats, right? Where it doesn't make sideboarding as straightforward. And I think that's coming to fruition here, where Kronos just, all his units are dying and he's got a handful of spells, and both players have a handful of spells. What's going to happen?
Yeah, this feels kind of just like Felm Control versus Rakano is kind of how it's played out so far. In just the way the cards have panned out. It does look like Kalimdor brought in a lot of the Lightning Storms, though, which are going to pan out relatively well in this particular game, because Kronos has been slow to develop threat by the right end.
Interestingly enough, because Kronos brought in these Finest Hours, these Lightning Storms aren't as good as you'd think they would be.
Yeah, exactly. And he might change his mind as a result of that, in going into game 3.
Oh man, if Calendar draws a power here, this could be a big turn.
Yes.
Lightning Storm into Harbinger, absolutely. Okay, let's see if he sequences right. Okay, Lightning Storms first, then Harbinger, so Harbinger's not in torch range, and this is big. This is going to be hard for Kronos to come back from.
Yeah, and how many cards does Kronos even have that deals with this? Did he have any obliterate? I didn't notice any obliterates in his sideboard.
You can double torch it. You can Finest Hour and then Vanquish it. But a lot of those cards are already gone.
It's slim.
You can block it with your own 5/2 flyer. But yeah, Calendar's going to be gaining a lot of life and putting in some pressure in the skies. And Kronos has to hope to, in the battle of Rakano versus Felm, you're pretty happy if Felm draws even 10 power to Kronos is 7. Like, Rakano on 7 power is a nice place to be. So there's still a long ways to go in this game. This is only a 6-turn clock. Kronos can just draw some insane things here, but it looks like we're just drawing power back and forth. One of the second Harbinger. Oh God, they always come in packs eventually, right?
Well, one of the things that also is a pretty big important element of this as well is that since Kronos never had an opportunity to really connect with any of his Warcry units, it's not like he has like a 6/6 or 7/7 lurking on top of his deck. It's all 2/1s
and a Hammer of Might.
Yeah, Hammer of Might, great. So, I mean, I guess he got one Warcry trigger off, but because of that slow development in those beginning games, like that's one of the things that allows the Warcry deck to maintain parity with something like Film Control. Because although they might fall behind, like suddenly it's just like a 7/6 Oni run and comes off the top of the deck.
Right. You're playing a bunch of undersized units. To be fair, right? Like most of your units are 2/2s for 2, which are undersized against any of Felm's units, and you need those war cries to get going, and that's why it's so important that how Kalimdor approached that was just like, nope, don't get greedy, don't try and get 2-for-1s by letting them equip anything.
Nope.
Just try and remove every unit, never let them like equip that hammer and get that war cry and stick it to them, right? And that's important.
So it doesn't look like the players are going to be sideboarding moving into game 3. They are just getting ready for the challenge, I think, to be sent out. So it doesn't look like there'll be any changes, which, as we said, the lightning storm was a debatable one. Actually, maybe it is Kalimdor's considering making some changes.
Kalimdor was looking at it like, I don't think Kalimdor was maybe like I was not really expecting the finest hours to stay in, and the finest hours did make those lightning storms a little awkward. But as you saw, they ultimately didn't super preserve the units. Like in all those situations, Protect would have done essentially the same thing, but Protect also protects against Annihilate. And that's where I was thinking. But Kalimdor is playing enough units that I suppose Kronos feels that the finest hours are still justified.
Both players have pretty good hands. Kronos is a little bit power screwed in the way that things are going to develop, but he is going to be able to have at least his faction requirements online relatively early into the game. Now, Kalimdor does have the instigators, though, which are going to do a great job of coming up the ground.
This is tough for Kronos because, wow, Kalimdor doesn't even block. I was going to say, if he has to use Finest Hour here, he can't even play a War Cry unit. So I was just a little surprised even by that attack, right? Like Kronos is tight on power, and if he had to use Finest Hour there, he's not going to get to play a 2-drop. I don't know if that was even worth it.
But well, anyway. That it's a hard one. Okay, so now Kalimdor. Yeah, there's a lot of hard decisions.
If I'm on double Midnight Gale, I'm going to try and get one of these.
Yeah, I think that connecting with Midnight Gale seems like a reasonable plan. Clearly, Kronos is pretty power starved right now.
Yeah,
so you know that at the very least. And he is also representing Finest Hour very loudly with that attack previously.
So forcing him to use Finest Hour here. Okay, so this way you can still block and trade with the Finest Hour, and that's why you still attacked with your 3/3. Makes sense. Ooh, and Sabotage here is it could give you some peace of mind for your next Midnight Gale, if you so choose. And you see that they have no spells, which means they're going to top deck Torch next turn. That's how it works. But in the meantime, you get to play another Instigator. This is a weird spot where
both players are pretty power tight.
Okay, so he's going to try and double block here, be the plan, and hope they don't rip a spell.
Huh. I guess you have that confirmation that they don't have the Finest Hour in
Especially
hand.
now they drew a power and been stuck on power for a while. Ooh, Suffocate's a big get. The question is, do you try and dominate the skies with Midnight Gale and Suffocate here, or do you realize that, my opponent must have a lot of units in hand. Maybe one of them is another Silence. I don't know if you can afford to think about that here.
So he does just develop the Midnight Gale, and it just appears if Kronos will respond to this by probably playing the Valkyrie of his own.
Yeah. Do you get aggressive here as Kalimdor? It looks like the answer is no.
I see. I'm tempted to, because it is something that your opponent has some very strong top decks available to them, right? Like if they're able to connect with something like a hammer on the champion, you're going to be in a rough spot. See, there it is.
Yeah, and now you're in a rough spot because I think I would have swung with maybe at least one unit there. You still had the double block for champion available now. Yeah, I mean, hammer's just the absolute best top deck possible there.
Yep.
If you're Kronos, and you're really sad if you're Kalimdor because you just drew nothing but power off this Wisdom of the Elders. That is not what you wanted to do. You just drew 4 straight power. That Like sitting back and waiting made sense if you drew a lot of action off that, and that's what he was planning on, and the opposite happened.
Yeah, but it's also something that this is the snowball that we were talking about previously.
It takes one hit to get rolling, right? It just takes one hit, and now Calamdir is just going to sit here and get whooped. And Kronos is going to win this game with 2 Crown Watch Paladins never even being casted.
Yep. Yeah. Well, this is also one of the things that we were saying is that when, like we said 5 power, but in this case 4 power.
Umbran Reaper buys time.
It does that.
It buys time. Very well. You're going to get low, but he could still stabilize here. That was a big draw. It's...
Well, I mean, an Annihilate changes this game pretty rapidly, right?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, all that he really needs to get back into it.
Yes. Yeah, but Annihilated, Death Strike, a feeding time, anything like that.
Yep.
I mean, you are still pretty low. You are at 2, so Torch at any point can kill you. You have Kronos figures it out. It's like, oh, I can get even 1 more damage in here and take him to 1. And Kronos only has to, chooses to kill the not silenced instigator.
I think that's actually a mistake, but it's still, I do like the attack at the very least.
And now he's got 2. He is in the dead zone. Oh, you lightning storm your own dude to gain some life. That doesn't really do it.
I mean, it's a clever play. Won't work out, but good game nonetheless.
Kronos was at 5 at the end of that game. So when we were talking about there were maybe some spots to get those attacks, that could have been relevant. You got like 2 more attacks in at one spot, right? Those Reapers were timely, but not quite timely with the lines that Calamdir took. Well, but overall, pretty close games, really fun games.
Well, I think that this is one of the elements of like in Calendar's seat, he sees that his opponent is power. You're struggling in power, so you kind of are incentivized to punish them for it, right?
Right. The saying goes in a game of power flood versus power starvation, the power starved deck will win in the long game if you give them enough time, because they're just going to have more spells than you.
Yeah, and so as soon as they get power, they're going to have the best spell in their hand available to them everywhere afterwards. While when you're playing off the top, flooding out, you are just forced to play whatever you have, even if it's not the best in that given situation. So that's rough.
Yeah. Rakano is a very punishing deck. It's if you make one small little error, they will find that window to get that war cry in, and that's what happened there, right? You just Warhammer into a weapon, just brutal.
Well, one of the things also that we mentioned is that that Lightning Storm is kind of iffy in the matchup, and it was rotting in Calendar's hand all game long, right?
Yeah. It was sitting there until it killed his own Umbran Reaper.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't know if there were any other better removal spells left to the side, right? It's generally going to be better than Permafrost still. And it looked like he maxed out on his Annihilates and Suffocates.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm definitely not arguing that it's totally incorrect to have it in your deck. It's a very difficult call to know what number is right. In that game, it looked bad. In the previous game, it looked okay. So I don't know.
Yeah, it was a tough call. You could have went either way on a lot of the decisions made that game that we were talking about. Same with the game before.
Game is hard.
But, nobody can actually predict the future.
Yeah, maybe that's just square talk, but that's just me. Anyway, with that, we are going to be going on a short break. Hopefully, going into round 5 as soon as it's available. But from Rhino and I, we love you all, and we'll see you soon.